The New York Islanders blow a golden opportunity to get into a playoff spot, but we'll tell you why this team is down but not quite out coming up next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the New York Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us to talk a little Islanders hockey today. We have got a lot to cover on this show. We'll go over the disappointing performance in the loss to the Vancouver Canucks. We'll have our key takeaways, our hero, and go to the game. And we'll update the playoff situation and explain why this team is not out of the running just yet. But let's start with what happened at UBS Arena last night. The Vancouver Canucks come to town, and the New York Islanders have a chance to be in a playoff spot by the end of the game for the first time since November. And unfortunately, it just didn't happen. And what we saw was a very typical Islanders performance. Some moments that were very good, but a lot of the same problems that have plagued this team came back and bit them in the rear end and ended up costing them the hockey game. In the first period, the Islanders, for the most part, were the better team. Let's face that. They outshot the Canucks in that period 10-5. At one point, it was 4-2 Vancouver in shots on goal, and the Islanders had 8 of the last 9 shooting shots on goal, scoring chances in this opening period. And yet, when you get to the end of the period, the game is scoreless. And part of that was outstanding goaltending by Thatcher Demko, who is back from injury and did a good job for the Vancouver Canucks. Sometimes you just got to tip your hat. And the Islanders had some really good chances. They set up some really nice scoring opportunities, but they didn't lift the puck. Demko ends up making pad saves. And on a couple of those chances, the player was in a little too close to the goal when they got the puck. So lifting it was hard. But the Islanders need to be able to finish. And again, the lack of an elite goal scorer on this team really hurts, because you get one goal in that first period and this game could have looked different. And look, to their credit, the Islanders fought back, and the game, they took a 2-1 lead 9 minutes into the second period. Great shorthanded goal by Casey Cizikas, tied it at 1. And Pajot made a beautiful pass, backhanded pass to set Zeker up. That was an outstanding goal. And, Tony DeAngelo puts the Islanders up 2-1. And then slowly but surely, it fades away. And look, let's start with this. The Islanders would be nowhere near the playoffs this season without the strong goaltending of Ilya Sorokin. It just would not even be close. This team would be probably in lottery contention rather than 1 point out of a playoff spot. But Sorokin just wasn't good in this game. He ends up giving up 4 goals on 19 shots faced and comes out of the game. I think Patrick Waugh did the right thing by pulling him after he gives up that 4th goal just a minute and 5 seconds into the game. And again, this game is lost because the Islanders give up a goal in the final 30 seconds of the second period, and they're down 3-2. And I tweeted out at that point during the second intermission, you're down by a goal, and the playoffs, you're in a playoff spot if you win this period. Go out there. Let's see the intensity. Let's see this team. How badly do they want it? And after giving up a goal in the final 30 seconds of the second period, they come up and give up another goal 65 seconds into the third period. And then a 1-goal deficit becomes a 2-goal deficit, and it changes the entire complexion of the game. And those are the 2 goals that I think more than any other, Ilya Sorokin would want back. Now, look, the defensive combination of Adam Pelech and Noah Dobson was not good in this game. They were both -2, and they just didn't space themselves well, gave way too much room and time and space. So, the first 2 goals, I believe they were on the ice for both of them, and it just wasn't a good performance. And again, Dobson's poor positional play in his own zone has hurt this team time and time again over the course of this season. But the Islanders had this opportunity, even down 4-2, okay? You're down 4-2 at home. Again, you can pass Montreal and put yourself in playoff position if you win. And the Canucks gift the Islanders 2 power play chances. Quinn Hughes heads off for tripping at 6:20. Pia Suter heads off for hooking at 15:19. And the Islanders power play did nothing. I mean nothing. And again, if the power play scores on either one of those chances, it's a different game. You have a much better chance of getting into a tie, overtime, a shootout, at least getting a point out of this game. And remember, because Vancouver is in the Western Conference, it doesn't matter whether they get 2 points or 1 point or no points. It has no impact on the Islanders. But the power play couldn't even set up in the zone. They couldn't establish possession very long, let alone move the puck well and create scoring chances. They couldn't even get time in the offensive zone. And again, the poor power play is not the reason the Islanders lost this game. They went 0 for 3 on the power play. 0 for 2, excuse me. But it cost them a chance to get back into the game after they fell apart. And, too many defensive breakdowns in this game. And the Canucks took advantage of it, and the Islanders didn't. And if you look at the shot chart on this game, there are good things that we saw, okay? You look at the shot chart in this game, the Islanders had a lot of high danger scoring chances, or at least chances that were taken from in close and right near, the area in between the faceoff circles, draw a little triangle to the crease. They had a lot of chances from in close and could not cash enough of them in. And look, Pierre Engvall continues to go to the net and good things happen. J.G. Pageau took a nasty puck to the face. To his credit, he came back to the bench, but wow, blood coming out of his nose. I'm glad he was okay enough to return. He won 9 out of 11 faceoffs in this game. But the fourth line, which had been so good for the Islanders recently, -2 in this game. Maxim Siplikov, bad in his own zone on the first 2 goals as well. Here's the problem that this team has. And this is a problem that a team in the muddy middle, like the New York Islanders, is going to have. When you're in the muddy middle, there is not a lot of room for error. And when you can't score enough goals and you make a defensive mistake and it ends up in the back of your net, you can't get it back. And that hurt the Islanders again. When the Islanders made a defensive mistake, the Canucks cashed in. It ended up in the back of the net because their breakdowns are pretty spectacular. And when the Islanders had a chance to score from in close and put the puck in the net, they couldn't finish. And you know what? That is the Islanders' season in microcosm. That is the essence of this team's many problems. The power play wasn't good. They couldn't finish when they did get opportunities. And they just had too many breakdowns in their own zone that led to goals being scored. Now, the way the Islanders flip this script is that their goaltender, whether it's Sorokin or Varlamov when he's healthy or Hogberg when he's in there, stand on their head, have a great game, and keep the team in it. Well, tonight or last night, Ilya Sorokin didn't have his A game, didn't really even have his B game, and when he doesn't play well, it's really hard for this team to win. If your goalie isn't playing really well and you are ranked 27th in the league in goals scored, you're not winning a lot of games. And that, again, happened to the New York Islanders. We have got more to get to on today's show. We'll have our hero and go to the game. We'll break down some more analysis from this frustrating loss. Plus, we'll update the playoff situation. Are the Islanders still in it? And why? We're going to tell you why they're still alive. And for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a former Buffalo Sabre who came on to be the captain of the New York Islanders in the early 2000s. Let's see if you can guess who that is. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Trade Coffee. If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee, but I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it. That's why I turned to Trade, and let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. I took their quick quiz, and in under a minute, they matched me with a roast that was fresh, smelled incredible, and tasted even better. My first bag was a game changer. It had such a smooth, rich flavor, and I could actually taste the difference from my usual coffee. The subscription makes it so easy. No more last-minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever's on the shelf. And if you don't love your first bag, no worries. Trade will replace it free until they get it just right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL. That's drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL for 40% off your first order. So, the Islanders, again, the most consistent thing about this team all season has been their inconsistency. And it's maddening because this was the time where they could have passed Montreal and gotten into a playoff spot. And they just didn't do it. And, a couple of the guys who you count on for offense didn't provide much. Kyle Palmieri, 0 shots on goal in this game, -1. Simon Holmstrom, 1 shot on goal, -1. J.G. Pageau had the beautiful assist, took that puck to the face, but also no shots on goal. These are guys you're relying on to put pucks on the net, and they just don't come through. You know who led the Islanders in shots on goal in this game? And they had 28 shots as a team. Pierre Engvall had 5 shots on goal to lead the Islanders. And again, with Engvall, you go to the net, you play the way that Patrick Waugh wants you to play, and good things happen. Engvall did not figure in the scoring, but he was a +1. He had 5 shots on goal, and he played well again. And he absolutely needs to keep it going because he has skill, but he needs to use it the right way in order to be effective. If he's not playing the right way, he doesn't add anything. In fact, he can be a detriment. But when he does things the right way, boy, oh boy, you see the difference. And if he can do it consistently, it would make a big difference for the New York Islanders. Old friend Atu Ratu, who the Islanders sent over to Vancouver in the Bo Horvat deal, ended up scoring a goal for the Canucks. He was a +2 and had 3 shots on goal. Ratu's goal tied the game at 2-2 in the second period. I'm happy to see him do well, just not against the New York Islanders. And again, would I still do the Bo Horvat trade if I had a choice to do it over? Yes, I would. But disappointing to see Ratu score against the Islanders, but glad to see him doing well. He spent most of the season in the AHL, got called up due to injury. And here's the other thing. Both the Islanders and the Canucks come into this game desperate for a win to keep their playoff hopes going. And the Canucks come in with no Elias Pettersson and no Nils Hoglander. 2 of their best offensive players flew back to Vancouver before this game even started because they're injured and they're not going to be able to play. You got to take advantage of those kind of opportunities. When the other team is missing 2 of their better offensive weapons, you're at home. You've got a chance to get into the playoffs. This is when you need to play your best hockey. And the Islanders, after a pretty good start for most of the first period, could not sustain it. And, being in the muddy middle the way this team is, just when you think that the Islanders are going to fall out of the race, they play well and they get back in it. And just when you think that the Islanders are going to be in the playoffs, in a playoff position and getting things going, they go on a 6-game point streak. Yes, 3-0-3, but you think they're getting it together. They're making that run and they come up with a flat performance like we saw last night against the Canucks. This team remains in the muddy middle, and it makes it really frustrating to watch. Hero and GOAT of the game. I think the hero is easy. I got to go with Casey Cizikas. He had the goal, shorthanded. He had an assist, +2. Did his thing and played well for the New York Islanders. I liked his effort. You can add 2 hits to that equation, and he did all of that in just a little more than 13 minutes of ice time. Go to the game. I got to go with Ilya Sorokin. I mean, there are other candidates. You could talk about the power play. You could talk about the duo of Dobson and Pelech. You could talk about the fourth line. But, you know, at the end of the day, when your goalie has a save percentage of .789, you're not going to win too many games. And if you're the New York Islanders, you're going to win even fewer games. So a blown opportunity here, but it's not the end of the season for the New York Islanders. We're going to explain why this team is still in the playoff hunt and take a deeper dive into where they're at. We've got that, plus our Islanders birthday of the day coming up next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast, easy? Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot when you need to hire like yesterday, and the pressure is on. Every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed Sponsored Jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you could speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. With this loss in regulation, the New York Islanders remain 1 point behind the Montreal Canadiens in the race for the second wild card. The Canadiens have a game in hand. The New York Rangers are tied with the Islanders, but the Islanders have a game in hand over the Rangers. The Columbus Blue Jackets are 1 point behind the Islanders and the Rangers, but the Blue Jackets have a game in hand on the Islanders and 2 on the Rangers, and Detroit 2 points behind the Islanders and even in games. The problem right now is that of the teams that I mentioned, the team that owns the tiebreaker with regulation wins is the New York Rangers. They have 6 more regulation wins than the Islanders, 7 more than Montreal, and I can go down the list. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but you're still only 1 point back with 11 games to go. It's not over. But here's the bottom line. This team is capable of getting into the playoffs. There's no doubt about that. The rest of the Eastern Conference teams that are fighting for this playoff spot are equally mediocre. The Islanders are in the muddy middle. Everydayers, you know, we've talked about that. But listen to this. Montreal has only 4 wins in their last 10 games. 4, 2, and 4. They've got a lot of loser points that put them where they are. The Islanders are 4, 3, and 3 in their last 10. The Rangers are 3, 6, and 1. Columbus is 2, 7, and 1. Detroit is 3, and 7. Nobody can separate themselves from the pack. The other thing is, none of these teams, Montreal, the Islanders, the Rangers, Columbus, and Detroit, have a positive goal differential. The Islanders are minus 19. The Rangers -2, Columbus -8. Those are the two highest out of these teams. And Ottawa, by the way, who has the first wild card right now, the Islanders are 5 points behind them. Now, Ottawa has a game in hand. It's not impossible to make up those points, but it's unlikely. The reason the Islanders are still in this is because everybody else in this playoff hunt is just as mediocre as the Islanders. So who's going to get hot down the stretch? It isn't going to be easy for the New York Islanders. There's no question about that. This weekend, back-to-back road games. Tampa Bay, Carolina and Tampa Bay. Saturday, Sunday. Then you have Tampa Bay at home, Minnesota at home, Washington at home, at Nashville, the Rangers, at Philadelphia, at New Jersey, Washington, and closing out the season on the road in Columbus in a game that very well could make or break whether the Islanders get into the playoffs or fall out. You need to get hot at the right moment. You need Ilya Sorokin to play well. Now I'm going to say this flat out. You've got a back-to-back coming up this weekend. 2 games against good teams on the road at Tampa Bay, at Carolina. One of those two games, you have to play Hogberg. Is Ilya Sorokin's poor play last night partially due to overwork? Maybe. He certainly didn't look sharp. Could he be fatigued? Absolutely. Again, it comes back to not being good enough and then being desperate and bringing out your goalie time after time and not having a backup goalie you trust. Hogberg worked out well, but clearly they didn't trust him until he proved them wrong. And I don't think they trust him a lot at this point. If they start Ilya Sorokin in both of these games this weekend, I'm afraid he will get burned out, even though there's only 11 games left heading into these two. We'll see. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. I think this was an easy one, but Wednesday was the 51st birthday of former Islanders center Mike Peca. The Toronto native, a second-round pick of the Vancouver Canucks in 1992, made his NHL debut with Vancouver in 93-94, went to Buffalo for the 95-96 season, joined the Islanders in 2001-2002, spent 3 years on the island. His best year is first, 25 goals, 60 points in 80 games. Islanders made the playoffs all 3 years he was with the team, then played for Edmonton, Toronto, and Columbus before hanging up his skates after the 08-09 season. Mike Peca, 864 career games, 176 goals, 465 points, 798 penalty minutes, add 15 goals, 34 points in 97 playoff games. Did not win a Stanley Cup. Played in 15 playoff games for the Islanders, had 1 goal in those games. One of his better games as an Islander, February 26, 2002, Islanders hosting Boston at the Nassau Coliseum. The goaltenders, Andrew Raycroft for the Bruins, Chris Osgood, the Wizard of Oz, for the Islanders. Boston takes a 2-0 lead in the first period, in the first 4 minutes of the game. But then our Islanders' birthday of the day, Mike Peca, goes to work. He scores midway through the period from Sean Bates and Mark Parrish to cut the lead to 2-1. Then he sets up Adrian Aucoin late in the period. Sean Bates, the other assist. After 1 period, it's tied 2-2. Then in the third, Boston takes a 3-2 lead on a goal by Glenn Murray. And Mariusz Czerkovsky heads to the box in the final 30 seconds, but Mike Peca scores the game-tying shorthanded goal with less than 2 seconds left in the game. Adrian Aucoin and Mark Parrish the assist. This one goes to overtime, but ends in a 3-3 tie. This is before the shootout. But for Mike Peca, our Islanders' birthday of the day, 2 goals, 1 assist. He's a +3. He had 5 shots on goal, which tied him for the team lead with Adrian Aucoin and Roman Hamrlik. And he played 19 minutes and 23 seconds. He did have a shorty and the game-tying goal. Mike Peca is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all season long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or any time. We will be back tomorrow, everydayers, as we will preview both of this weekend's big games for the New York Islanders. We'll also have the latest updates on the standings, so make sure you join us for that. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.